welcome back to my channel 5-Minute Economics, where I try and teach economic concepts in a span of just 5 minutes. The topic for today is monetarism. So you know guys that in economics we have several schools of thoughts like the classical, Keynesian, and later on there came a separate school of thought which was known as the monetarism or monetarist school of thought, however you can put it. So these monetarist economists were very different in their thinking because they were a whole different school of thought apart from Keynesian, classical. They came post the Keynesian economists, and in this particular video I'll be talking about what actually is monetarism, how did it originate, the basic background, the introduction, who was the main monetarist economist, where I'll be also talking about the features of monetarism, some criticisms, some differences between Keynesian and monetarist school of thought. So yeah, let's get started. Also guys, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel and follow me on Instagram at my handle 5-Minute Economics. So firstly guys, let me take you down the history of economics and let me tell you about the history of these schools of thoughts and how did they all come into picture. So the first and the foremost or the most initial school of thought was the classical or the traditional school of thought, where it originated from the 1850s period, where we had one very famous economist also known as the father of economics, which is Adam Smith. There were many, but I'm just giving you one example. And then post-classical only, they had a continuation of the neoclassical. Further, we moved on to the Keynesian school of thought, which came into picture around 1930s when the Great Depression occurred. Keynesian theory came into picture and they criticized the classical theory, that had the classical theory been so perfect, we wouldn't be stuck in a depressionary period. And that is when Keynes, J.M. Keynes, who doesn't know Keynes, came into picture. Till up to few years down the line, this all worked perfectly unless US faced a situation of stagflation, which is a situation of inflation and stagnancy, like a rise in inflation, rise in unemployment. And that is when monetarists came into picture around 1970s, and they said if Keynesian theory was so perfect, how was the economy stuck in a stagflationary period? And that is when the very famous economist whose name you will be hearing many times now when we talk about monetarism, Milton Friedman, came into picture. So Milton Friedman, who was in Chicago, his from the University of Chicago, and his other colleagues out there, they formulated this particular theory. So what is monetarism? I hope you're clear how it came into picture as in. And now talking about, so guys, I've already made many videos on classical and Keynesian schools of thought. I mean, what they comprised, what Keynesian school did. So you can check all of them out on my channel. Moving ahead to what does monetarism focus on? Number one, monetarists focus a lot on money. As the name suggests, monetarism, they focused on money and money supply, and they gave due importance to money, which was until now kind of ignored. When you do the Keynesian theory, did you actually hear about money? No, because Keynes always focused on aggregate demand, aggregate supply, ADS, effective demand. He ignored money, but over here money is the king when we talk about monetarism. Now since money is a king out here, we will be talking mostly, like more importantly, on the monetary policy. So up till now, if you remember guys, Keynes, he had focused much on the fiscal policy. He was the advocate of fiscal policy, in fact. But when monetarism came into picture, they advocated monetary policy, and they said that fiscal policy, that is the policy of taxation and government expenditure, is an inadequate policy, and it is a monetary policy, which is the policy of the central bank, which is the king, or which should be used. They actually had mixed schools of, mixture from schools of thought of classical and Keynesian. To some extent they agreed to what classical said, to some extent they agreed to what Keynesian school of thought said. Their whole theory was based on the quantity theory of money. I have made a few videos on quantity theory of money. If you want, I'll attach the link in the comment section below, where we focused on this particular equation, MV is equal to PT, where V and T, velocity and transaction, if kept constant, they actually said that if money supply increases, prices increases, and that is why rise in money supply is the cause of inflation. So their focus was a lot on the money supply. Keynes actually said yes to inflation always. Keynes was someone who said, okay, inflation is good for the economy always. But monetarists were more careful. They said too much inflation or too low inflation is bad, but an inflation of 2 to 3% is good for the economy. So they kind of wanted a balanced situation of inflation in the economy, and that is what the monetarism school of thought is based upon: the money supply, monetary policy, quantity theory of money, and that's all. I mean, if you know this, you know the background of this particular theory. So now let us go ahead to the features or the tenets of monetarism. So number one, they believed in the working of a free enterprise, just like how the classical school of thought thought to be. They also believed in that. Secondly, minimum role of government. Unlike Keynesian school of thought, who advocated the role of government and they said, government intervention is necessary, monetarists said that the role of government should be limited to law, order and defense. Then tendency of full employment. So they said that the economy tended towards full employment in the long run. Only money matters. So as the name suggests, monetarists were big time advocates of money. They said that everything revolves around money. Inflation is because of excess of money supply in the economy, and monetary policy is the one which can control it. So they, unlike Keynes, who focused on aggregate demand, and classicals who focused on rate of interest, their focus was only money. Next, flexibility of wages. So flexibility of wages means that we can easily change on wages. So this is similar in context to even classical school of thought said. So Keynesian said that, however, wages were rigid and that was not very easy to change wages. But they said wages can be easily upar niche ho sakte hain. Then inflation. So then they said that inflation was very important, as in they focused that inflation should be in a controlled manner. How Keynesian always said कि चलो inflation is good, यहाँ पर उन्होंने बोला है कि कम और ज़्यादा नहीं होनी चाहिए. It should be like a 2 to 3 moderate%, like just I told you. Constant velocity of money. Velocity of money, which is shown by V, is always said to be constant. The velocity is basically number of times money exchanges hands. And lastly, role of monetary policies. They were big time advocates of monetary policy. Unlike Keynesian school of thought, who always cried about the fiscal policy, they were the ones who advocated the monetary policy. So now guys, moving ahead to the differences between the major two chunk schools of thought, that was Keynesian and monetarism. So by now I'm sure you do know few differences, but let me precisely tell you what were the major differences. Number one was the Keynesian school of thought always hovered around the problem of unemployment. For them, unemployment was a major problem in the economy, how to deal with it, solutions to it. So their thing revolved around unemployment. Whereas monetarist school of thought always focused on inflation. Too little inflation problem hai, too high inflation problem hai. So their analysis revolved around inflation, problem of inflation. Secondly, here they said, Keynesian school of thought said that it is the mismanagement of the aggregate demand which further led to the problem of unemployment. Whereas here monetarisms, they said that the changes in the money supply cause inflation, So they were focusing more on changes in money supply, here aggregate demand. Thirdly, I think by now you know that they did advocate government intervention. They did say that, C plus I plus G, that government was brought in by the Keynesian school of thought. Whereas here, monetarisms, they didn't believe in the government intervention and it should be limited to law and order only. Next, they focused on fiscal policy of taxation and public expenditure, whereas monetarists focused on the monetary policy of the central bank, comprising of, discount rate, bank rate, all of that. So detailed videos on monetary and fiscal policy are available on my channel, guys. And lastly, for them, money is just one variable. Government expenditure, taxes, all of that were the other variables. But for them, money is the only variable. Money is the king over here for monetarists. So lastly, guys, let me talk to you about the criticisms of the monetarist economists and their thoughts. So, however good you might be, you will always be criticized. So that is true for even economics, that every policy has been criticized, every school of thought has been criticized by someone or the other. So number one thing here, we considered MV is equal to PT, where we considered velocity to be stable, and that was something which is not true. So that was criticized. Secondly, too much importance was given on money supply. Like everything cannot revolve around money, right? So other economists like the Keynesian school of thought, they did criticize this. Thirdly, money supply is not an exogenous factor, how the monetarisms considered it. In fact, it is an endogenous factor. And lastly, is real world does not, have that flexibility in prices and does not adjust like the general equilibrium. We said wages are very much flexible. That's not true. There are trade unions and wages cannot be that flexible in the real world. So these are few of the criticisms of monetarism. Thank you so much, guys, for watching this video. Please let me know if you like this video and do subscribe to my channel. Let me know in case you want a video on any specific topic. I'll come up with that very soon. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you in the next video pretty soon.